Hello and welcome to Practical Christian Lessons, and you're going to get some important insights into how this channel works and some behind the scenes stuff. Let's get into it. So, I'm making this as like a sort of announcement video, but there's also some important notes for, especially if you're going to be following along on our Messianic series, but on various series throughout this channel in general. So, if this doesn't sound like something you're interested in, then I'm sorry, but you are going to get some really good book recommendations and stuff out of this and some interesting tips that you might find useful. So look at the chapters if this doesn't necessarily sound interesting at first, and see if there's anything in that. In the description will have the chapters as well as to, parts you might find interesting. I'm going to start off with the more interesting part first. And at least what I think is more interesting. That's like when I'm recommending books on this channel, right, such as the Moody Handbook of Prophecy. If you're going to get, or Messianic Prophecy. If you're only going to get one book on Messianic Prophecy, I recommend getting this one. But I'm recommending that book and things like The Messiah in the Old Testament by Walter Kaiser for very different reasons than I'm, say, recommending books like this. These are good books. I am recommending these books because they're talking about important historical notes. So these say things I disagree with. I mean, we're not all going to agree with everything we ever read. That's just part of life. But they do say things that I think are just objectively false and at times like extremely misleading. Right. For example, this is, what is this? This is the introduction for the Messiah in the Old Testament, right? And they say some things in here that I think are just inaccurate about Christianity. So I'm not recommending them because they're promoting correct things about Christianity in general. I'm not saying that everything they say is wrong or that it's false, but I think they do have things like this. In contemporary Judaism, Messianism generally plays a minor role. I'm not speaking to that. I don't keep up with modern Judaism. I'm more interested in ancient Judaism and the ancient roots of the faith that modern Judaism has since departed from, if that's not obvious on this channel. But this statement, the view traditionally held by many Christians that there is a fundamental opposition between the Torah and faith in Jesus Christ, between Judaism and Christianity, and the historical consequences of this ideology may, at least in part, explain this standpoint. Right? I have a huge problem with that statement. Well, I mean, other than it's just objectively false. Right? If you read the New Testament, if you look at the early church, they are not opposed to the Torah. They're not opposed to Judaism of the ancients. What they are opposed to is their contemporaries, and they'd be the same reason they'd be opposed to modern Judaism. And that is because it has departed from the faith of our ancestors. It just has abandoned it. And that's clear in places like the Talmud, where it openly attacks things that were once held commonly in the Second Temple period, such as, most notably, the Memra and the Shekinah theology, that those were somehow members of the Godhead, that they were divine, however you want to phrase it, hypostases, persons, whatever. That's clear throughout the Second Temple period, on top of other things. And you have figures like Rashi, who openly say that he's taking an interpretation because it is better to attack the Christian interpretation. And you have the battle between, I mean, it wasn't really a battle. They didn't battle too much with each other. One was dead. But Maimonides and Nachmanides, where Nachmanides is critiquing Maimonides for rejecting ancient tradition. And no one tells him that he's wrong in his critique. Maimonides eventually wins out in his influence in modern Judaism, but Nachmanides correctly points out, right, the battle of Ramban and Rambam, that he is departing from ancient understandings, that God did physically enter this world. Benjamin Somers has noted this in his work, I think it's called The Body of God, that the Lord physically did enter creation. That is undeniable from the Old Testament itself and from the ancient teachings of the Jewish sources. Later Jewish sources in modern Judaism has an issue with this idea, but not ancient Judaism. So I have an issue with that's how that's kind of framing things. I am not saying that at times it hasn't happened, but it's also especially clear if you study, especially later medieval theologians, but even debatably early Christians, where they have strong critiques and at times will name specific rabbis and Jewish individuals. And their critiques are theological, right? Of course there are exceptions. I'm not talking about the exceptions. I'm talking about the strain that you can trace through Christian thought. And we can know that because there's times where someone will convert from Judaism to Christianity, like truly convert, not just convert because they had to or they were going to be killed or exiled. And the critiques are lifted. They're like, this person's now a brother in the faith. And they're not critiquing that they're Jewish. They're not critiquing their heritage. It was always about the theology. That should be obvious. But that's right. When I'm recommending this specifically in the Messianic series, I am recommending this because it notes ideas of the Messiah in early Judaism and Christianity. It does what the book says it does. It does a good job at that. And that's why I'm recommending it. It explores these early ideas. I'm recommending this, well, one, because I agree with a lot of what he says in here. The same with the Handbook of Prophecy. But two, I think these are correct. That not only are these the correct Christian interpretation of how to approach Messianic prophecy, this is the correct approach to the Bible. Things like this. This is super important. And that's why I'm recommending things like this. And that happens with all the stuff on my channel. I don't always say it in my videos, and I really should, why I'm recommending some things. Like if there's caveats I need to be adding, I'm really bad about forgetting to nuance things properly. I'll say things often, and then later I'll be like, I misspoke. I said that improperly. I said it slightly wrong. I meant something else when I said it, but that's not clear in the way I said it. That happens a lot. I've been corrected in the comments, and the people who correct me in the comments, I appreciate that a lot, It's important to be honest, and there are times where you will misspeak. You might unintentionally say something false, and you need corrected on it. Or you'll say something that's true, but in a way that is actually not true. So you need corrected on it. That happens. We're all people. I just want some grace and mercy when that happens. And the people who have been correcting me gently, I greatly appreciate it. And to everyone who shows up as a troll and unnecessarily hateful, especially towards people who aren't me, if you're hateful towards me, whatever. But if you're hateful towards other commenters or other people in the chat, I'm going to handle it a bit differently. I'll warn you, and if you're persistent, well, you're out of here. I'm not going to let that happen in my comments, as long as I see it, and I don't see every comment. Sometimes the YouTube thing doesn't show me every comment in the notifications things. I forget to check the comment thing. That's what it is. Other important notes for this channel, right? We've been talking about going to 2 videos. I'm not sure when it's going to happen. It might happen sooner rather than later because school's starting. Actually, today, when I'm recording this, January 30th, as officially the start of class, for me anyway. And, that comes with a lot more work and a lot more reading. I've been pouring a ton of time into my Messianic research because I'll be teaching on it later this year at my church. I'll be preparing stuff for the channel, of course. Ideally, I'll have time to make some PowerPoints and stuff to go with what I've done. I've already written several pages worth of notes, several videos worth of notes. And I've got, I don't even know how many pages. And I've been doing a ton of reading and a ton of writing. I have been pouring through the Bible. I had a goal of finishing the first 4 Gospels and Acts and the first 5 books of the Old Testament, the Pentateuch, in January, and I did it. These things take a lot of time, and I'm not going to have that same amount of time with school starting up. That just is what it is. And, there might be changes in job soon, depending, I've applied at some chaplaincy places, and I'm hoping to hear back from them and, get chaplaincy jobs. But then that will also, a change in work. It changes how the schedules and things work and how I organize things in my life. And there's, of course, other stuff going on behind the scenes. My wife and I, we've been trying to have a kid for a while now. And, I've been tested to see if, maybe I'm the problem. And we're going to have to deal with that struggle. The Lord will be good no matter what. And may we lean on him and learn to cherish even in the times of trial, as we just talked about with our John Wesley on patience video. Even when things are hard, that's not always a bad thing. Just because something, right, say I am infertile, just because that's a bad thing, doesn't mean there's not good to be had in that situation, and that the Lord can't use that for good, because he absolutely can. And At times, I'm smiling right now. I'm leaning on the Lord. I had a great experience in prayer recently over this exact thing. That doesn't mean it's always easy. And there are times where it's harder than others. And that will impact the channel at times. I am a man, so my personal life will impact the things I'm putting out on the internet. That's just is what it is. And I want to do more. I've set up a Patreon on here. I still need to actually go in there and figure out how to make videos available. Hopefully, if you're watching this, I've already figured that out, because there's no Patreon persons on Patreons, whatever you call someone who's a subscriber on Patreon, there. So it hasn't been a problem yet. But I want to put that out there. I have a Proverbs devotional that's available in my Discord. I want to put that up on there. That one actually is pretty easy. I just need to actually go download it again and then re-upload it up there. But I'm also working on a lot of other things too behind the scenes. I'm basically working on several book-length projects, and a lot of that I've pulled for material on the channel, because if I'm working on it behind the scenes, I might as well put it in here. And some of that's, I'm going to be pursuing a PhD. I'm already doing PhD work ahead of time to prepare myself for that. I started putting things together that are related subjects and on other projects, and I'm like, well, if I've done all this work, I need to put out something where it's all in one place, stuff like that. There's going to be a lot of stuff coming over time, and I don't want to be, I'm trying to do the balance of time and work. And as Brian Russell recently put out a video on his deep dive spirituality podcast, there is a very real danger, and it's something I struggle with, like workaholism. Not at work, thankfully, though I do take a lot of overtime. It's something in ministry, right? And it comes with a thing of like, you're often praised for your workaholism. That's one thing he highlights, right? In regular work environments, you're told you're being a workaholic. It's not a good thing. You're away from home too much. You're stressed too much at work. It comes home and you're not present at home, stuff like that. And when you're doing work in ministry, right, you are helping people, right? That's what ministry is. But when you're overextending yourself there, when you're putting too much into that, especially as ministers, you're getting applauded for it, and that feels good. It feels good to get told, oh, you're doing so much. Look at all this stuff you've done. Look at all the things you're doing. Look at all the things you're going to do. And I'm not saying that's happening with me, by the way. But that does happen with pastors and stuff. You're like, oh yeah, you're at church 6 days a week. You're there. Let's take 8 a.m. to 8 p.m. working hard, taking phone calls, visiting people, sermon prep, whatever. And of course, those are good things to be doing. But learning to balance when you have that tendency can be hard, because I don't want to do so much with everything I'm trying to juggle to where I burn myself out and drop all of it, because I've done that a lot in the past. That's not a good thing to be doing. But I also want to make sure I'm doing the work I'm supposed to be doing, because there are times when I feel like I'm working too much. I then have a tendency to overcorrect and will spend too much time not doing anything. Those are both problems. Balance is a hard thing to find. If anyone has good tips on balance, I'm always welcome for some tips. Brian Russell's video was great. There's some great tips in there that I need to chew on and implement. But pray for that. I will take prayers for that, because school starts. That's something that I really want to be handled well, because I want to make good stuff for you guys, everyone who watches these videos, everyone who comments, everyone who likes, everyone who dislikes, everyone who's engaging. I want to put out stuff for the edification of the church, for the building up of the church, and to reach out to those who are outside the church and invite them in, to invite them to seriously challenge and question their worldviews and their critiques of Christianity, the true faith, the true religion, and invite them, as the scriptures say, in Christ is the light, is the life, is the promise of salvation, that our sins haven't so separated us from God that there is no way back. The Lord has come down to us and extended his hand. And no matter what you've done, there is that extension. There's that promise. And that should bring us to tears. That is such a beautiful thing. Right? Psalm 23, which is something I was singing the other day in the car, right? Surely goodness, surely mercy will follow me all my days. I will dwell in your tent forever and praise your name. That's we really need to sit down and think about how powerful of a statement that is. That we get to dwell with the Lord forever. The creator of all things, goodness itself, love itself, and be in his presence when we did not deserve it, when we deserved the exact opposite. That is something that we need to be humbled by on a regular basis. And I am not humbled by it enough, to my shame. But when I am, I want to bask in that. It is a beautiful and glorious thing that we are promised there. I think that's it for this video. Thank you guys for whoever's been here and listening to these rambles. Just wanted to put those things out behind the scenes. Oh, and we're doing some interviews. We did, if it's out by the time, I just finished filming an interview today. It'll be in the description. And I don't want to spoil anything because I don't know if the people I'm being interviewed by want me to talk about the things I'm being interviewed by, and that's being done. So I'll reach out to them, and if it's okay, when those things happen, they will be in the community tab. Of course, when it goes out in the public, I'll put a link to it. So keep an eye on the community tab. If I get approval to talk about those things, they'll be in there. Check those things out. And I'm hoping to find time to hopefully write a bit more this year, like publish writing, not just writing my stuff behind the scenes, because I write a lot behind the scenes, but I want to try and move more to writing public things for you guys to have alongside what I'm putting out here. So that, of course, I want kept in prayers, but if there's things specific related to what I'm doing here on the channel that you want explored more, that I don't necessarily talk about in my videos, or you want to pick my brain on, of course, I'll reply to comments. But if you want something a bit longer, comment on a few videos, say, hey, I noticed this and you haven't talked about it. I'll look for it in the next video. Hey, you still didn't talk about it. Do you plan on making a video about this, or can you write something about this? It doesn't have to be big. I might not do it, but I do want to take everyone who's commenting and stuff into consideration, right? I'm putting this stuff out to build up the people who are watching it and listening to it. So, audience, in fact, doesn't matter in this case. So you guys take that. I hope, right, we're moving into February. It has been a strong start to the year for a lot of people in good and bad ways. And may that push us forward to lean on God for the good and the bad, to praise when it's time to praise, to mourn when it's time to mourn, and live fully into the Christian life. You guys have a wonderful day. God bless.